him from day to day. You know, like that teary eyed one he has in the prison, for instance, that all the prisoners sing with him. There's a ton there, and they're really 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 well done.
Well, and it helps too that like they're not obviously all original. Like this is partially a jukebox musical, so I think there's only.
I didn't recognize which ones weren't because I'm not as familiar with like I've always just loved this overall sound, but I honestly don't know a lot of the artists that are involved in it. So I don't know like which songs were from the era and which weren't.
Some of them are ones that like were big enough that you would recognize as being other people's, like Mr. Sandman obviously was like huge. Sure. But I do think that I'd have to double check the exact list. I think it's only 2 or 3 songs in the movie are written for the movie. And I think King Crybaby is one because of the exact, like the lyrics are just so specific to the movie. And then I think High School Hellcat, I think is one of them near the end of the movie. But so many of the other ones were just ones assembled to match the movie because John Waters, I guess, knew a guy who was a little bit older than him who grew up in this exact era and had like deep cuts and was like a DJ. And so he said that when he went to the music supervisors of the actual studio, he came to them with like a mixtape of like, here's a guy who found like songs that work with my script. And like they used the wording in the script so that they sounded like they were more like they were pretty much written for the movie. There's so many songs in here about crying.
yeah. And and one I was wondering in particular too was the one where he mentions being locked up until he's 21 years old. Like that I had to assume was also part of the film because it's specific to the sentencing that he gets. But then, I mean, who knows? You could easily have a song from that era where it's like about a young rebel that thinks he's going to be locked up in juvie until that time. So it's very possible. I'd be very curious. But some of the I was watching the behind the scenes from this, and it had a bunch of like John Waters interviews and stuff. Maybe you watched it too, but there was a really interesting thing that I thought was like it just showed how scared they really were of these kind of like greasers and rebels back then. Just the image that the adults had. Like an example was they used an actual murder of a 14-year-old Drapette as a cautionary tale for youths back in the day that he was aware of. And I just found all of those stories that he was telling interesting. Like you already mentioned it, but he knew one that lived across the way from him, and he had like the same card that they use in this in the movie, which I thought was interesting. But just using that like that fear of the image of the rebel to be like, you could end up dead in a river if you put on the leather jacket. It just really showed what they were scared of back then.
Yeah. No, I think it's cool how much, again, this can similarly to Bigelow, you could tell that this was someone really wrestling with this imagery and this iconography. And I mean, John Waters grew up with so many of these movies, and he cites so many of them like Running Wild and Live Fast, Die Young, who one of the cast members plays Hatchet Face's tuberculosis parent in the court scene from that movie. The Restless Years, and once again, the Wild one with Brando is one he talks about a lot. And even though, again, I do think that part of the motivation for this was of going kind of mainstream and being handed studio money was that for anyone who's obviously familiar with his regular crew of actors, Divine, the drag queen, passed away of a sudden heart attack shortly after making Hairspray with him, and fantastic performance in Hairspray, by the way.
I still haven't seen it. Role. I've got to watch that.
It's very similar to this, even though John Waters gets very annoyed at people for calling it a musical because it became a hit Broadway musical, but the original movie is not. Like, again, it has musical sequences, I guess you could say, but like they're all about dancing. Like gotcha. it's all like radio songs that play on TV that the kids dance to. It's not like this. He's like, this is my musical movie. This was the one where I was like, I'm going to actually shoot full on singing, and I'm going to actually have, assemble this playlist in a way where I'm going to have my, members of my cast singing it, even though a lot of this actually isn't the cast, the actors precisely singing it, but they did cast people to sing the songs for them.
I kind of loved that about the Johnny Depp stuff. Like when he goes into the deeper voice, voice, you could kind of believe that it might be him. But all the high pitched stuff that they did back in the 50s with like the super falsetto male vocals,
the like Frankie Valli stuff that he does. Yeah,
I loved actually it being like completely detached from him. It almost felt like it's like he was dreaming it, like he wasn't capable of doing it, but it's just the love was so powerful or whatever it was. It had this I don't know, like cinematic quality, like this surreal quality to it, almost something that was out of reality.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good decisions like that and very specific decisions to him. I mean, one of my favorites is how much of this is like all John Waters stuff filled with so many strange personalities and kind of memorable faces and the kind of people only Waters would populate a movie with. And we talked about a lot when we were talking about something like Female Trouble, because the whole idea of the movie is he makes it with friends and family and it's self-representation of a community. Like I'm showing off what it is that like we have funny people in like the queer underground community that deserve to maybe be movie stars. And in this, you can see him casting people like Tracy Lords and Kim McGuire and Ricky Lake, once again, who is obviously leading Hairspray, and Iggy Pop is in this. Willem Dafoe shows up for a scene. There's a lot of fantastic actors and a lot of very terrific just mania and gags and absurdity and anarchy, despite the fact that, again, he is throwing them into a pretty traditionally satisfying and catchy and beautifully colorful sort of like musical film. And he's already proved himself good at this. I mean, we haven't covered it yet, but at some point we'll talk about Polyester, which is, I think, similar to what he's doing here, where he's parodying the like 50s women's picture melodramas. And you can see how much affection he has for this era of movie making he grew up watching and how good he is at recreating it and kind of playfully stylizing it with his own anarchic sort of campy cartoon.